Welcome to the Places and Profiles podcast, the podcast that explores the issues, stories, and people that have shaped places into what they are today. Here's your host, Adam Kamek.
If you're a creator, podcaster, blogger, or someone who is trying to make money online, then one of the most effective ways to do that will be to have an email list you can write to and sell to. ConvertKit is the email marketing platform designed specifically with creators and online business owners in mind. Get your email marketing set up with ConvertKit by going to placesandprofiles.com/convert. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Places and Profiles podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Geoff Schumacher about key figures and events in the historical and cultural development of Las Vegas. Geoff is the Vice President of Exhibits and Programs at the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. He's the author of Howard Hughes' Power, Paranoia, and Palace Intrigue, and Sun, Sin, and Suburbia, A History of Modern Las Vegas. He also served as editor of Nevada, 150 Years in the Silver State. He has edited, co-edited, or contributed to 7 editions of the annual Las Vegas Rights Anthology for Nevada Humanities. You can follow Geoff's work at themobmuseum.org. You can also follow the Mob Museum on X or Twitter at The Mob Museum and on Instagram at The Mob Museum. For more information, please check out the show notes page for today's episode at placesandprofiles.com/13. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. So let's start out with the origins of Las Vegas, because on the surface, it would not seem like the type of city that would come into existence. Desert climate, water is an issue. So what are some of the things to know about the difficulties of establishing Las Vegas, and just how did the founding and establishment of the city of Las Vegas come about?
Yeah, so, it depends kind of how far back you want to go. But what we know in the 19th century is that people really wanted to go to California. If they were coming from the east to the west, they would get through Nevada as quickly as possible en route to California, not only for gold, but for agriculture and everything else. So for the most part, people didn't stop in Nevada. But in the case of Las Vegas, the old Spanish Trail ran through Las Vegas. And one of the reasons it did that is because we had water. In fact, Las Vegas is Spanish for the meadows, which is because we actually had, springs bubbling up out of the ground here in our valley, which is very unusual when, areas preceding Las Vegas and following Las Vegas on that trail were dry as a bone. So when people were coming, over these trails, they desperately appreciated the opportunity to maybe have a bath, to certainly have their horses get water and everything else. So Las Vegas became a little bit of a settlement in the late 1800s, but just had a few ranches, few places for people to stop along the way. Things really changed in the beginning of the 20th century when a railroad was being built between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. And roughly the halfway point was Las Vegas. So a decision was made by the railroad builders that they would create a town site right here in the valley. They bought land from local rancher, and then they proceeded to build the railroad and built a little town site in Las Vegas, what became known as Las Vegas. They auctioned off the lots, and a town was born in 1905. At this point, the railroad still very much controls Las Vegas. This is the primary industry. And it became a place very small, 1,000 people or so, people coming in from California, people coming in from Utah, settling here, trying to build a town. Things really took a more positive turn for Las Vegas in 1931. And 3 different things happened in 1931. First of all, you had the legalization of gambling in Nevada. And this opened up an industry during the Great Depression that was very helpful to Nevada. The second thing was construction began on Hoover Dam. And for those who recognize Hoover Dam, it was a major undertaking right in the midst of the Depression. So the jobs on the dam were highly sought after. Thousands and thousands of people came to Las Vegas, to the Las Vegas area, in hopes of getting a job at Hoover Dam. And so it was a real boost to the economy here. And the third thing is we made marriage and divorce laws much more liberal. It was easier to get married and or divorced in Las Vegas than it was in other states. So Las Vegas economy was sort of the future economy was sort of invented all in 1 year, 1931.
Well, I want to return to some of the topics that you just mentioned momentarily. But before we do so, can you talk about the role of Mormon settlers in the establishment and growth of Las Vegas, and in general, the role that Mormonism has played in the city of Las Vegas?
So there's really two ways to talk about the Mormon influence in Las Vegas. The first and probably most important one is that the Mormons were the first non-native settlers in the valley. So they came here. They had settled in Utah, of course, and they wanted to create outposts, all over the West. And one of the things they wanted to do is they used this trail, which was called the Old Spanish Trail, and later became known as the Mormon Trail, to transport goods and people and services back and forth between Utah and California. And so they sent a group of missionaries to Las Vegas with 2 or 3 goals in mind. One was to build a fort along the trail so that they could protect people coming through, and also create some kind of a stopping point for Mormon people traveling back and forth on the trail. They also wanted to proselytize to the local native population in hopes of growing their population of Mormon settlers in the West. And so they built quite a community here, but it only lasted a couple of years. They were here from 1855 until 1857, at which point Brigham Young, who was the leader of the Mormon church at that time, called them all back to Utah. There were other sort of external factors going on. There was a concern that the federal government was going to send troops to Utah and do something, horrible with the Mormon people there. So they wanted to everybody to come home and defend the territory. That didn't end up happening. There wasn't really a war at all. But it also their leaving Las Vegas had a lot to do with the relative failure of the settlement. Mining that they hoped to do in the mountains did not go well. There was a great deal of disagreement about the path forward in Las Vegas. People were not thriving here, and so they ended up going back to Utah. But this was the first wave of Mormon involvement here. Then later, in really the 40s, 50s, 60s, you saw a pretty significant migration of Mormons from other places to Las Vegas, and it became Mormons became quite a presence here, became very involved in local government, cities and county government, other kinds of operations like airports and transportation, both in the public sector and in the private sector, and not so much in gambling, although a few people were involved in that in the back of the house. But for the most part, they were involved in building the community that we know today.
Now, earlier you mentioned 1931, and you mentioned how that year was significant because of the Hoover Dam, marriage laws being changed in Las Vegas being relaxed or liberalized, as well as that being a year in which the gambling industry was born in Las Vegas. Let's go back to the Depression era. Can you talk a little bit more about how the Depression era shaped Las Vegas? And in particular, can you talk about the Hoover Dam? We'll get back to gambling here in a little bit, but can you talk about the Hoover Dam and its significance in a little more detail as well?
Yeah, the Las Vegas could have been devastated by the Depression, as so many other towns and cities were across the country. We had 25% unemployment across the country at a time when people were just living hand to mouth trying to survive. That wasn't really the case in Las Vegas, and the reason for that was largely Hoover Dam. The plans for Hoover Dam were announced a few years before construction actually began. So around 1928, 29, Las Vegas was starting to see an influx of people coming here wanting to work at the dam, wanting to be part of this area and in this thriving economy. So Las Vegas saw this massive influx of individuals really just as the Great Depression was starting. And the construction of Hoover Dam generated, several thousand very good paying jobs that supported not only the families of the people working at the dam, but they also bought products and services in Las Vegas and helped to grow the community. And so Las Vegas was not hit by the depression as hard as other places were. It was a place of relative prosperity, and this had to do primarily with Hoover Dam and then also with the legalization of gambling.
All right, and let's jump forward now to World War II. So Nellis Air Force Base is built during this time period, and that obviously is going to have an effect on Las Vegas. What impact does World War II, does the establishment of Nellis Air Force Base have on Las Vegas? How does Las Vegas change during that time period?
One of the sort of threads that you see in Las Vegas history is how it has benefited from federal involvement in the community, federal investment. This happened with Hoover Dam in 1931. And then in the 1940s, it happened with two projects. One was the development here of an Army Air Base, later known as Nellis Air Force Base. But at the beginning, it was an Army Air Base, and it was designed to train pilots for combat. So this drew thousands and thousands of people to Las Vegas. And then at the same time, there was a decision made to build a magnesium plant just outside of Las Vegas called Basic Magnesium. The magnesium deposits were found in central Nevada near a town called Gabbs. And the decision was made, we really need this magnesium for the war effort, but we also need water to access to water in order to have this plant to process this magnesium. So they decided Las Vegas was the best place for that, and they tapped into Lake Mead for the water source. Giant plant is built in what is now Henderson, Nevada, and again, thousands and thousands of people descend on Las Vegas to work in this plant. So between the Army Air Base and the magnesium plant, Las Vegas can transform from a town into a city in a matter of a couple of years.
Now, one other topic related to the U.S. military that I want to touch on, and this isn't located in Las Vegas, of course, but a lot of people will think of it when they think of Las Vegas or the state of Nevada, and that's Area 51. Now, I don't want to go too far down conspiracy theory lane with this, but since we are discussing Las Vegas, and a lot of people do think of Area 51 to some degree when they think of Las Vegas in the state of Nevada, I figured that we should discuss it. So what can you tell us about Area 51 and how that fits in?
So after World War II, we had the rise of the Cold War. And this is a time when the United States and the Soviet Union are locked in this cold battle for supremacy in the world. And it was a very intense time of research and development in hopes of, having some advantage on your enemy. And a lot of this had to do with aircraft, right? How can we improve our surveillance? How can we improve our warfighting capabilities on both sides? And so in the United States, this was, of course, as it was in Russia, was done in secret. And the decision was made to establish a base adjacent to the Nevada test range, Nevada test site, that would be a very remote location where experimental aircraft could be tested, could be built, test runs, all of the things you needed to develop better and faster and more elusive aircraft. And this came to be known as Area 51. People were flown in from Las Vegas and from Southern California on a daily basis to work at Area 51, and they were involved in the most cutting edge, air technology that there was in the world at the time. And some people have speculated about, somehow aliens who crash landed in the United States were transported to Area 51 and were studied there. There's no actual evidence of that, but what there is evidence of is this experimental aircraft that people would see over the skies of rural Nevada and wonder, oh, is that a UFO? I don't know what that is, so it's a UFO, right? Unidentified flying object. It doesn't mean we can't find an answer for it eventually, but that's kind of how that developed.
All right, now let's go back to the gambling industry. And when a lot of people who do not live in Las Vegas think about gambling in Las Vegas and in the state of Nevada, they think about the strip and all of the glitzy, glamorous casinos with the flashing lights and each having its own unique character and unique traits that are fun for visitors to explore when they're visiting Las Vegas. How did the strip come about? How did the establishment of the strip come about, and how did that change and influence the gambling industry in Las Vegas?
So when gambling was legalized in Nevada in 1931, we're right in the middle of the Depression. And even though Las Vegas was economically was benefiting from Hoover Dam, there was not a lot of money to invest in big casinos, right? So, and there wasn't quite yet the realization of the potential of legal gambling in the state. But what we did have was a series of small gambling joints, gambling clubs along Fremont Street, which was the main commercial strip in downtown Las Vegas, still is today. And Fremont Street became the hub of gambling for Las Vegas. But the way that was built up, it was built on the former town site that the railroad had built in Las Vegas, and all of the lots were very small, and everything was very tightly packed together, like you would see in many big cities around the world. But that was not conducive to the type of resort that people envisioned for Las Vegas later on. So during the 1940s, you saw developers say, I don't really want to build downtown because there's no room for a swimming pool, there's no room for horse stables, there's no room for any kind of ability for people to spread out. So they bought land much more cheaply on Highway 91. Highway 91 was the highway to Los Angeles. So there was idea there you could buy, 20 acres, 30 acres, 50 acres, and you could build a more of a suburban style, Palm Springs style resort on that property. And you could get people to stop and stay longer because they're not just gambling now. They're also going to the swimming pool. They're also going on horseback rides. They're going and playing golf, all of these kinds of things that you could not do on Fremont Street. So this started what later became known as the Las Vegas Strip. The first hotel casino on Highway 91 was the El Rancho Vegas, opened in 1941. And then you had the Hotel Last Frontier, opened in 1942. And each of these had this sprawling style to it that was very, very different from the Fremont Street clubs. And then the third and really pivotal resort on what later became the Las Vegas Strip was the Flamingo Hotel. And the Flamingo was built, originally conceived by a man named Billy Wilkerson, who was a nightclub owner in Los Angeles. And then later that project was taken over by Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, the New York mobster, who saw it to its opening on December 26th, 1946. And the difference with the Flamingo was that it was an elegant, high-class resort. It was a place where Hollywood celebrities and other sort of elites of America could come and feel comfortable in this little desert town. And it really transformed what became the Las Vegas Strip into a place of glamour, glitz, and fun, that it just wasn't quite the same. It was a better experience for many people than they were getting on Fremont Street.
And we'll return to Bugsy Siegel here in a little bit because we're definitely going to talk about organized crime. But continuing on with this notion of the strip and its development and the development of the gambling industry in Las Vegas, there are three particular people I'd like to take a moment to focus on: Benny Binion, Kirk Kerkorian, and Steve Wynn. So who are these three people, Binion, Kerkorian, and Wynn, and how significant have they been to the evolution and development of gambling in Las Vegas?
Well, let's start with Benny Binion, the oldest of the three. Benny Binion was a gambling racketeer out of Dallas. He had controlled all of the illegal gambling in Dallas in the 1930s and early 1940s. And he did that largely by being able to bribe all of the politicians he needed to bribe to continue operating. Well, in 1946, so there was a reform movement in Dallas, and the whole dynamic changed for Binion. And he didn't have people in office who wanted to help him. He had people in office who wanted to put him away in prison. So Binion literally pulled up stakes with his family and moved to Las Vegas in 1946, determined to participate in the legal gambling that was going on here. Binion is best known for his involvement in downtown Las Vegas, Fremont Street, where he built Binion's Horseshoe Club. And the significance of Binion's Horseshoe Club is that Benny had a number of innovations that were very significant. And one of those, most importantly, was really very high limits on gambling. He became the Binion's Horseshoe became the place for gamblers, for serious gamblers to go and play poker, play blackjack, play all the different games, table games that they wanted. So you saw a lot of high rollers leaving the strip or never going to the strip, going directly to Binion's Horseshoe because that's where they could gamble big bucks and where they could have an environment where there's other very skilled people involved in the gambling business. So Benny was somebody who brought a lot of high rollers to Las Vegas and really made the casino the centerpiece. And one of the things that Benny is most famous for is that he invented the World Series of Poker. And the World Series of Poker has become this iconic, gambling extravaganza every year, televised worldwide. But at the time, it started at Binion's Horseshoe, and it just attracted a relatively small number of gamblers. It grew every year, and then eventually became the behemoth it is today. But it was Binion who popularized poker, and really, Binion's was the place to learn how to play well. So that's Benny. Kirk Kerkorian started out in the aviation industry. He grew up in very humble origins in California, Southern California, but he got involved in the aviation industry, became a pilot, and then had his own airline that would fly people back and forth between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, including later he flew Bugsy Siegel back and forth between the two cities. Kerkorian would come to Las Vegas a lot. He took a liking to Las Vegas, and he decided eventually that he wanted to invest in the gambling industry here. He had a few, kind of very minor investments that he made in the 50s and the early 60s. But when he really became serious about it, it was 1967. He bought the Flamingo Hotel. After that, he built the International Hotel, which later became the Las Vegas Hilton and is now the Westgate. And when Kerkorian built the International, his first major, ongoing performer was Elvis Presley. And Elvis became, someone who drew sold out crowds night after night after night at the International. And so Kerkorian had always thought big. And the International, when it opened, was one of the biggest hotels in Las Vegas. In 1973, he opens the first MGM Grand, and that later became Bally's, and ironically is now Horseshoe. But at the time, it was called the MGM Grand, and it was the biggest hotel in Las Vegas. Attracted high rollers, lots of celebrities, lots of big names came here, and so Kerkorian was always identified with something getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In the early 1990s, he opened the second MGM Grand, which it still stands today on the Las Vegas Strip, 5,000 rooms, biggest hotel in America, and really an iconic view on the Strip. So Kirk Kerkorian is important because he wasn't a mobster. He wasn't someone who with a lot of strings attached to organized crime. He was an entrepreneur who had a vision for Las Vegas that it could be much, much bigger than anybody had previously envisioned. Steve Wynn came to Las Vegas in the late 1960s, and he very much wanted to be someone like Kirk Kerkorian. He wanted to be a big player, a big developer of casinos, and he was able to do that. His first major investment was in the Golden Nugget downtown. He transformed the Golden Nugget from one of these small Fremont Street gambling clubs into a Las Vegas Strip style resort right there on Fremont Street, which it still is today. And it was Wynn who really put downtown, kind of put downtown Las Vegas back on the map with the Golden Nugget. He even convinced Frank Sinatra to come and perform there. So from there, Wynn then is even more famous for in the 1980s when he used junk bonds to finance the construction of the Mirage Hotel. And the Mirage opened in 1989. It was 4,000 rooms. It was the biggest thing anybody had ever seen in Las Vegas. It had, dozens of restaurants and shows and all kinds of. It had, the Siegfried and Roy, and it had a dolphin habitat. It had elephants. It had everything you want in a resort in Las Vegas. It was gambling, yes, but it was really all of these other things combined that turned it into the kind of experience we know of today in Las Vegas. Steve Wynn was a visionary in that sense. And then he went on to build the Bellagio, which was even bigger and even more elegant. The giant, water show in front of the hotel, which is still a centerpiece of a Las Vegas visit. And then from there, he went on and built the Wynn, naming it after himself, in the Encore. And in each case, Wynn was trying to beat himself, trying to do something even more elegant, even more creative than he had done before. And spent a lot of money doing it, but he also made a lot of money for himself and for the community.
And one other figure that I want to talk about who had a significant influence on the development and the trajectory of Las Vegas, and that's Howard Hughes. A lot of people, when they hear the name Howard Hughes, they might think of him as being a germaphobe or a recluse and think of some of the eccentricities that seem to have characterized much of his later years. But what can you tell us about Howard Hughes and his influence and significance to the city of Las Vegas?
Howard Hughes was a very significant player in Las Vegas. He actually started visiting the city in the early 1940s. Spent a lot of time here in the late 40s and early 50s. He even leased a home here, and that was his residence in 1953 and 54. So Howard Hughes was very familiar with Las Vegas well before he got involved with the gambling industry here. He returned to Las Vegas in 1966, right after he had sold all of his shares in Trans World Airlines. And he received a check from TWA for $546 million after he sold his shares. And at that time in American history, if you had $546 million sitting in the bank, IRS was intending to take about 75% of that. So what you needed to do to avoid that was to invest that money in something new. Hughes comes to Las Vegas and with the plan that he is going to kind of take over the state, at least from a business standpoint. He wanted to be a big fish in a small pond. He was having trouble in that way in Los Angeles and in the rest of the country where, people were standing in his way, and he didn't like that. He saw Nevada as a place where he could get done what he wanted to get done. And when he first arrived, he didn't even have a vision for living he didn't have a vision for buying casinos. That was not his mindset. His mindset was buying land, buying airports. He bought a television station. He bought mining claims all over the state, and he wanted to go in that direction. But when he was living in the penthouse suites of the Desert Inn Hotel, and they wanted him out because he wasn't a high roller, he wasn't a gambler, he was a recluse, he decided to buy the hotel instead of moving out. And when he bought the Desert Inn and started looking at the numbers with his associate Bob Mayhew, he kind of discovered, maybe we should buy some more of these casinos. This might be a good thing. So he ended up buying 6 casinos in Las Vegas. He bought a 7th casino in Reno. And in each case, in Las Vegas, Hughes bought a casino from mob-connected people. So in that sense, he was starting to nudge the mob off of the Las Vegas Strip. I'm not saying he pushed them, but he definitely nudged them. And he, furthermore, was a big player in the passage of a bill in the Nevada legislature, which was called the Corporate Gaming Act. And the Corporate Gaming Act said that you did not have to license every owner of a casino project in Las Vegas. Previous to this, you had to license everybody who had an ownership stake in the casino. Even if they had 1%, they had to be licensed. But that's when you only had, maybe a half a dozen people who were the owners. If you wanted to be a corporation, you have thousands and thousands of shareholders all over the world. And it's impossible. Not only is it impossible to license all of them, but many of them probably don't want to be licensed in Nevada. So what the Corporate Gaming Act said is you only have to license the key employees, the key people involved in the operation of a casino. And this was a product of Hughes coming to town because, they kind of opened the eyes of the local, entrepreneurial set who said, you know what, we can really do well with corporate ownership of casinos if we just create the right environment. And that's exactly what happened in the 70s and 80s and 90s. You saw, much more investment from Wall Street and from corporations in the Las Vegas area.
One of the best ways to make money online is via email marketing. Even with the prevalence of social media use, building an email list and writing interesting, informative, and entertaining emails as part of a strategy to sell to the people on your list is still possibly the best and most effective way to make sales and increase your revenue. I use ConvertKit for my email list with the Places and Profiles podcast, and I highly recommend it. ConvertKit is a tremendous platform with a great reputation and is designed specifically for creators, bloggers, podcasters, and online business owners. ConvertKit has tremendous functionality and is very intuitive and easy to use. Get your email marketing set up today for your blog, podcast, or online business by going to placesandprofiles.com/convert. Again, that's placesandprofiles.com/convert. All right, now I want to go back to a topic that you mentioned earlier when you were talking about 1931. You cited the Hoover Dam, gambling, and marriage. So we talked about two of these three in a little more detail. Let's look at the other one. What have marriage laws looked like in Las Vegas over the years, and how did Las Vegas's unique set of marriage laws and the ease of getting married in Las Vegas come to be?
One of the things that people who, today might not recognize is that, in most parts of the country, decades ago, you had to get a judge to agree to allow you to be divorced. And you had to make a case, you had to make an argument in front of the judge. Here's why I want a divorce. And sometimes the judge would grant the divorce based on the testimony, and sometimes he wouldn't. He's like, no, you should stay married. Marriage was a very sacred thing in America at that time. And what Nevada recognized was that if it were to liberalize its marriage and divorce laws, that it could draw people, celebrities and other people to Nevada to get their divorces here. And mostly this is not like a money grab in the sense that there was a lot of money to be made from the actual divorce or the actual marriage, but it was the publicity. The publicity was huge. So if you wanted to get a divorce in Las Vegas in 1931 or thereafter, you had to come to town. The woman in particular, this was often the case, wanted a divorce. And they would come to Las Vegas and they needed to establish residency for 6 weeks. That was it. There were no other requirements. You had to establish a residency here for 6 weeks, and then you go to the court and you get your divorce. And what would end up happening is you'd have these celebrities come to town, whether they were actresses or singers or certainly the wives of famous people, and they would be the talk of the town for 6 weeks, right? They would come to town, that would be reported. Then there would be reports in the papers about what they were doing, where they were seen, who they were with, and these things spread across the country. And then when they actually got divorced, typically they would leave and go home, but that was news as well. So, but whether it was a marriage or a divorce, it was publicity for the city, and it helped to put Las Vegas on the map, just as legalized gambling had done.
Well, and another thing that put Las Vegas on the map, and we've teased this a little bit, and this is one of the things that Las Vegas is perhaps best known for, and that is organized crime. You talked about Bugsy Siegel a little bit earlier, but how did organized crime become such a phenomenon in Las Vegas, and who are some of the key figures and groups to know about the history of organized crime in Las Vegas?
There's no question that organized crime played a significant role in the growth of Las Vegas, especially the gambling industry in the 40s, 50s, and 60s and 70s. The mob took an interest in Las Vegas for two reasons. One, their illegal gambling operations around the country were seeing increasing pressure from law enforcement. They would, in the late 40s and then into the 50s, with the increased scrutiny of public corruption, political corruption in other places where sheriffs and politicians and judges were being paid off by the mob so that they could operate illegal gambling operations. There was a lot of pressure to shut those places down. And so the individuals who had been running those those illegal casinos, were looking for a way to ply their trade with less pressure. And they saw Reno and Las Vegas as places where they could go and operate legally. And that's exactly what happened. Is they came here and they brought their expertise with them, which we needed. We needed that expertise on how to run a casino, because otherwise there was no training schools for casinos, right? So you needed to have figures from organized crime involved early on in order to run an effective casino. And that's what really happened in Las Vegas in the 40s, moving into the 50s. The other real goal for the mob was to skim proceeds from off the top at the casinos. They knew that it was a cash business, especially in those days. Gambling was a cash business, and you could easily take money off the top. In other words, embezzle money and send that back to the bosses back in New York or Chicago or Cleveland or Detroit or Kansas City without anybody knowing. And there, it was a problem for Nevada in the long run, because that's money that was never taxed, right? That was revenue that was not taxed. So that money could have gone toward building schools, building roads, doing all the things that we needed to do to build Las Vegas. Instead, that money went into satchels and suitcases and bags, and it was transported back to the Midwest and to the East and to the Southeast and to Los Angeles, and never to be seen again. But this was a very lucrative racket for the mob, much more lucrative than what they were doing back home in many cases. Just the volume of money they were able to skim far exceeded what they could get from, extorting local business owners or robbing trucks or whatever they were doing, back in their home cities. So the mob really took a liking to Las Vegas, and Las Vegas initially was welcoming of many of these individuals, as long as they didn't cause any kind of serious trouble. So one of the individuals we mentioned is Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky. Behind him, they were involved in the Flamingo Hotel. And then you saw the opening of the Desert Inn in 1950. That was financed and operated by the Cleveland mob, Cleveland Syndicate, led by Mo Dalitz. Mo Dalitz would go on to become what was considered like a civic leader in Las Vegas. He was someone who was almost, his mob past was almost forgotten here for many years, because people saw him as someone who was responsible for building a hospital here, Sunrise Hospital. He was someone who had contributed to charities all over the valley. He built a synagogue, he built a country club. And that was all in addition, though, to the casino operations that he had that were definitely, taking advantage with skimming and other means. So Mo Dalitz was a major figure. And then as you move into the 1950s, you see the Chicago mob becoming involved in Las Vegas through the Riviera Hotel. And then the New York mob's involved with the Tropicana. The Dunes Hotel has mob involvement. You can kind of go on and on, even up into the 60s with Caesar's Palace, when the Teamsters pension fund financed the construction of the of Caesar's Palace, and its leader was Jay Sarno. And Jay Sarno was kind of a visionary, kind of a pre-Steve Wynn kind of visionary of how a casino should look in Las Vegas. But he also was very tied to mob involvement and mob requirements. There was skimming going on at Caesars as much as there was anywhere else.
Now, organized crime in Las Vegas, this is sort of a topic that's adjacent to the casino industry and to gambling, I suppose we could say. And I want to look at a couple of other topics that are sort of adjacent to casinos. And one of these is the culinary union and the hospitality industry in general. The hospitality industry makes up a large portion of Las Vegas workers, and the culinary union plays a particularly significant role in politics, not just in Las Vegas, but in the state of Nevada, especially Democratic Party politics. So just how big, just how significant is the hospitality industry in Las Vegas, and just how big of a role does the culinary union play?
Even though Las Vegas today is the metropolitan area is about 2.3 million people, we have a lot of things going on here, just like any big city, big metropolitan area. But the gambling industry, the casino industry, the hospitality industry remains the golden goose here. And it probably always will. It is the main engine for our economy. And one of the things you need to run a hotel casino is you need workers, right? You need people to run to work in the restaurants, you need people to work in the hotels, you need people to work in all the different facets of the business. And so Las Vegas has long had a tradition of sort of a working class population. Because of this strong working class population in Las Vegas working in the casinos, they were able to organize. And the biggest union in Las Vegas is the culinary union. The culinary union oversees a lot of the working class jobs, the blue collar jobs at the hotel casinos downtown and on the strip. And it not only has a lot of bodies in the union, but it has a lot of political power, it has a lot of influence here. And it's one of the most powerful unions in America, honestly, because it has been able to be responsible for electing people at the local level, electing people at the state level, and bringing people up who have moved on to, Congress and the Senate and gone on to very, big things in American politics as well. The culinary union is great at getting out the vote, right? So they have rallies, and they on election day they drive people to the polls. They make sure that their rank and file have the opportunity to vote and to participate in the electoral process. And it's something that's old school. It's an old-fashioned way of doing things, and it still works here, and it still is very effective. As a result, the culinary union is always part of any discussion, especially of any candidates in the Democratic Party who want to ascend the ladder here. You have to have some involvement with the culinary union.
Now, another topic that is adjacent to gambling and casinos in Las Vegas, or I guess two other topics. One of them would be sports, and one of them would be entertainment. And on the sports side, obviously, Las Vegas has been associated with sports gambling, although that is starting to spread much more so across the country based on the Supreme Court ruling from a couple of years ago. But in terms of actual sports being played, boxing has long had a home in Las Vegas, and Floyd Mayweather in particular has been associated with Las Vegas. Entertainment has also long been associated with the city. You mentioned Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley and their connections to Las Vegas earlier, but we've seen this with Wayne Newton, with Penn and Teller, with Siegfried and Roy, a wide variety of entertainers and acts associated with Las Vegas. So who are some of the key figures to know, and how did it come about that Las Vegas became such a significant place for sports, in particular boxing, and for entertainment in general?
So for Las Vegas, entertainment has been a staple of the hospitality industry really since the early 1940s. There were even, performers coming through town before that. But what what the early gambling entrepreneurs recognized was that people are not going to sit in front of a slot machine all day long. They're not going to sit at a gambling table all day long. And what's more, they bring spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends and sometimes children and other people with them on these trips, not all of whom are absolutely obsessed with gambling. So what you have to do is you have to diversify what your offerings are. So you need to have buffets, and you have to have nice restaurants. You have to have shopping. You have to have physical activities to do, golf and swimming and everything else. But really, the most important thing that Las Vegas innovated, if you will, was the showroom, and that becoming a place where big names from all over the country would come to perform. And Las Vegas had big names going back to the early 40s. Liberace, massive performer in Las Vegas for many, many years. Lena Horne, big time performer here. The list goes really on and on. Anybody you can think of who was a significant musical performer of the mainstream in the 40s and 50s and 60s played in Las Vegas on a regular basis. And the reason that the casinos were able to pull that off is partly because of this mob connection. The mob also ran all the nightclubs all over the United States. And so they knew these performers. They knew them. They knew their agents. They knew their managers. And so they were able to make Las Vegas part of the circuit rather easily for bringing in big name entertainers. And so the entertainment has always been a big part of Las Vegas, and even as much today as it ever was, as you see that the biggest pop performers that we have in the world today are doing residencies in Las Vegas, where they'll perform, practically every night for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then they'll go back home for a little while, then they'll come back, and it's really the Elvis Presley model. People identify Elvis as having been here all the time in the late 60s and early 70s, but that's not actually true. He was typically here for 2 to 3 weeks, twice per year. So he was here about 6 weeks total per year, but he was such a big draw that he just is a huge economic engine for the city. Same is true for, Lady Gaga when she comes here. We have U2 coming here for a residency. I mean, you can't get much bigger than that when it comes to drawing people to the casino. As for sports, Las Vegas has always been identified with sports, whether it's PGA golf or boxing or auto racing. But typically in the past, it's been kind of one-offs, right? So you have a major boxing match that draws people, tens of thousands of people to Las Vegas for a big fight, or you have Formula One racing or stock car races or whatever. And Las Vegas has always been attracted to that spectacle. Now, what's changed in the more recent couple of years is that Las Vegas has gotten big enough that it has attracted, major professional sports on a permanent basis to Las Vegas. So you have the Vegas Golden Knights NHL team, which won the Stanley Cup last year. You have the Las Vegas Raiders relocated from Oakland in a giant stadium in which they play. And you have women's professional basketball. And now it looks like we're bringing in a professional baseball team. The Oakland A's are going to relocate here. So not only do we have these one-off spectacles, conference tournaments in college basketball, big college football games, international soccer tournaments, but now we have permanent sports here that are not only of interest to locals, but also to tourists coming into town. They want to come and support their team when their team's playing here. And so the formula for Las Vegas continues to work.
Well, and the NBA has also taken an interest in Las Vegas. They have their summer league there. They had the All-Star game there years back. And it seems likely that at some point in the next decade, they will probably have a team in Las Vegas in some form or fashion as well. But you mentioned
5 years at the most.
Yeah, that seems likely. Probably Las Vegas and Seattle will get teams. But you mentioned that growth in the Las Vegas area has really been the driver for all of this. So just how expansive has the growth been in the Las Vegas area How has that changed the demographics of Las Vegas, and what has that meant for the development of some of the more prominent Las Vegas suburbs like Henderson and North Las Vegas?
So Las Vegas has grown outward in a model that have not grown up, we've grown out. So unlike like a San Francisco, where every building has multiple stories in the city, we're kind of a single story kind of minded place, maybe two stories. And so what's happened is Las Vegas has grown outward toward the mountains. It has spilled out into other valleys around the Las Vegas area. And what it has spurred is not the traditional suburban development that you see in the East or the Midwest, where you leave the city, you got 5 miles of woods or wilderness, and then you suddenly come upon a small town. It's a constant growth, amoeba-like, as wherever we can find private land, someone's going to build a house or a subdivision or a master plan community. The most prominent places that have grown up here are Henderson. Henderson's a suburb of Las Vegas that is a big city in its own right, almost 300,000 people. It has a number of master plan communities in there, led by Green Valley and Green Valley Ranch and Seven Hills and Anthem. These are all well-known names in Las Vegas. People are familiar with where they are, and they know people who live in these communities, which are very suburban style, upper middle class kind of places where people can kind of escape that Las Vegas mindset and feel like they're living anywhere in the country. Then you have Summerlin. Summerlin is the biggest master plan community in Nevada. It's one of the biggest in the country, and there are 130,000 people living there. And it's both in the city of Las Vegas and in the unincorporated county. And it's still growing. They're still building houses there. That has become probably the premier address in Las Vegas for people who want to who come here. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, I live in Summerlin," because of its desire, all the parks and schools and restaurants and businesses that operate there. And then you even have North Las Vegas, which is another city to the north of Las Vegas that you hardly can tell the difference as you drive from one city to the next. They're all kind of seamless. But Las Vegas's metro area is about 2.3 million. The estimates are that it'll probably hit 3 million by 2050. I think it might happen sooner than that. There are the issues about water availability, with the drought in the West, with climate change. There's the very real possibility that, Las Vegas may run into a water crisis at some point. We're not there now. We've been very good about conserving water here in recent years and using the water that we have as effectively as we can. We've sort of recognized that Las Vegas is in the desert. That's not something that people in the 1970s in Las Vegas thought about with their big expansive lawns that they would water, for 15 minutes every day or whatever. We don't do that anymore. Most people have desert landscaping and drought tolerant trees, and we're not using nearly as much water as we used to because we want to keep growing.
So one more question for you before we wrap up. Las Vegas is associated with the nickname Sin City. How did that nickname come about? What are the origins of that nickname?
So Las Vegas is often described as Sin City. People here call it Sin City. One of the ironies of that is there are Sin Cities all over America historically. When you do the research, you find that all kinds of places across the country have been dubbed Sin City, depending on, the nature of their, the things that they have there, whether they, during Prohibition, had a lot of speakeasies or illegal casinos operating or other dens of iniquity, depending on how you look at them. And Las Vegas, though, became kind of the biggest Sin City, right? And so you're the biggest, then you kind of adopt that moniker, or people adopt it for you. And so, Las Vegas clearly was involved in allowing gambling to occur in the open here legally at a time when 49 other states didn't have gambling. And so, you could see why people would look at Las Vegas as Sin City. We also had very liberal drinking laws, right? The bars did not shut down at 2 a.m. like they do elsewhere. They stayed open all night long. You had liquor stores, 24-hour liquor stores. You had people walking out in the street, inebriated. And you can see where some people might describe that as a sin city. For people who live here, it's a little bit troublesome because we live out we don't live on the Strip, we don't live on Fremont Street, and we live in neighborhoods where kids are going to school and going to the park and playing on the playground equipment, and it's not a sin city to us. But clearly, when you're looking at it from the outside in, you can imagine why people would think that.
All right. Well, Geoff, I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I want to remind everyone the show notes page for today's episode is placesandprofiles.com/13. We'll have links to the Mob Museum, their website, their X or Twitter account, and their Instagram there, and resources and books that we've mentioned throughout this episode. So placesandprofiles.com/13 is the show notes page, placesandprofiles.com/13. And Geoff, again, thank you so much for joining me. I was particularly excited about the subject matter for this episode, and it did not disappoint. This was great fun. It was very interesting, and I thank you for being so generous with your time today.
I enjoyed it very much. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Places and Profiles podcast. Please visit placesandprofiles.com to subscribe and listen to more episodes. Come back again soon, and thanks for listening.